militias that are firing against American forces in Iraq and in Syria, believe it or not, are holding back. They could do a lot more. They're simply reminding the Americans that they're here and that there will be price to be paid so long as this conflict goes on, that nothing is free. And what has the United States done? We've responded very minimally. We've bombed a couple warehouses associated with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Command, but we've bombed those warehouses before in, I guess, Abu Kamal across the river from Al-Qaim. We've been hitting that place, the same place over and over again. It's like the Iranians go, okay, rebuild the warehouse so America can bomb it next week, kind of thing. We're not doing real harm on the Iranians because we don't want to. If we do real harm on the Iranians, then they get involved. And now we're talking about an expansive conflict, and we only got 2,000 guys in that region. That ain't a lot of guys. And if the whole region blows up, those 2,000 guys can be swamped. They can be overrun. And now we have to divert all our air power into that area. Again, who's going to pay for it? We don't have a budget for this. And now we're doing that. And this war gets out of control, spins out of control. This is a nightmare scenario for the Biden administration. And if it blows up enough, because another area that everybody's worried about is what's going to happen with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has done a masterful job of escalation management. They have been, I mean, it's like the Israelis, are sitting there in this boxing match with Hamas, and Hamas split the eye, and Israel's bleeding here, and Hezbollah is just sitting there once in a while going, "Let me rub some salt in that wound for you. Come on, get out of here." Boom, boom, pow. They get salt in that wound. Stop it. Hezbollah is just sitting there pissing them off because they're really, really putting, and it's hurting them. Remember how sophisticated I said the Houthi were? Understand that most of what Hezbollah is doing against Israel is economic in nature. Yes, they're taking down Israeli troops. They're destroying a lot of Israeli tanks, a lot of Israeli infrastructure. But what they're really doing is terrorizing the north so much that 70,000 Israelis had to be withdrawn from the northern settlements and resettled in temporary accommodations. That ain't free. That ain't free. It's costing Israel billions of dollars. And that 70,000 who, they had jobs up there, which means they're working, they're producing, there's taxes, the economy kind of stuff. They're here now. They ain't working. They ain't producing. They're just sucking up resources. It's a huge, huge, giant, gutting of the Israeli economy. The same thing out of what Hamas is doing in the settlements in Negev. People tens of thousands had to be relocated. Man, this is a giant hole in the Israeli economy, and it's unsustainable. On top of that, 300,000 reservists. You know what a reservist is? It's a working man. It's a guy who has a job. He has a family. He is participating in the Israeli economic experience. And now he's not. Now he's in the reserves where he's getting a paycheck because they have to pay him, but he's not producing anything. That job is gapped. Whatever he was doing in the Israeli economy ain't happening right now. And billions of dollars. So what Hezbollah is doing, what the Houthi are doing, the economic impact on this is destroying the Israeli economy, destroying it. And this is unsustainable for Israel. So this alone is prompting the Israelis to say, we have to resolve this fight. You got people like Gallant. I think he's the Minister of Defense right now. What a character, with his genocidal talk. But he's talking about we're going to take it to them. Gallant knows, though, and so does the Israeli Defense Force, that if Israel were to open up a second front against Hezbollah, that Hezbollah will take Galilee, that northern Israel will fall. Because Hezbollah's got 80,000 guys. Many of them, most of them perhaps, are combat hardened. That means they've been fighting in that, the Syrian conflict. These guys know war. They're very well trained, very well equipped, very well motivated, and they have a plan. If you think the Hamas plan that was executed on October 7th was innovative, you haven't seen anything yet. Hezbollah has a plan to take northern Israel, and they will take northern Israel, and there's nothing Israel can do to stop it, which is a nightmare. So nobody wants escalation. So in a way, because we can't afford to escalate, the United States can't afford to escalate, Israel can't afford to escalate, you make it even, you give the people who are putting the pressure on you even more latitude because they know you don't want to escalate. So they're going to push the envelope even more. and create more and more pressure. And that's what's happening right now. This is the untold aspect of this war, but it's this aspect that's probably going to promote the collapse of Israel more so than just Hamas defeating Israel in Gaza.
Yeah, and maybe lastly on this, do you feel like the confluence of these various aspects of Israel's brutal onslaught and what it's produced, both in its troubles with fighting Hamas on its own terrain, and the fact that that there is an axis of resistance that has been managing a conflict escalator that is prepared to move up. Do you feel like, given that Biden has given this deadline, that Israel will actually follow it? Because Israel's capacity for rational military and political behavior, especially since the aftermath of October 7th, appears to have diminished nearly to non-existence. I'm curious on your thoughts about that.
I mean, it's a tough political question here in America because of the control that the Israeli lobby has over everything. Congress, the presidency, the media, the spin. So it's an uphill struggle to get America to, change its policy regarding Israel. In the past, it was Israel can do no wrong. We support Israel no matter what. But we're now paying a price for that. And so I do believe you're going to see pressure being put on Israel. I think Netanyahu is finished. I think he's going to go. I think Biden is going to make it clear that continued American support of Israel is contingent upon a change in the Netanyahu government. We pretend that it doesn't mean Netanyahu is going to go, but if you dissolve this right-wing coalition, then Netanyahu can't continue as prime minister because it's consensus-driven. He has to get a ruling coalition. He won't be able to. Somebody else will step in and take over, and that's what we want. But here's the danger of all this, Danny. Here's the problem. And we got to be honest about this, because right now we're being lulled into a false sense of complacency. Hamas is kicking ass. There's no doubt about it. Hamas will not be defeated. But who likes Hamas? Does Egypt like Hamas? Nope. Does Jordan like Hamas? No. Does Syria like Hamas? Not really. They were just at war with them a couple of years ago. They tolerate Hamas. Turkey? Yeah, Turkey likes Hamas, but not that much. Not enough to go to war for them. And the further we get away, you realize that Hamas is very unpopular. And if we just erase the term Hamas and insert the term Palestinian, let's be honest, nobody cares about the Palestinians. There's a whole bunch of demonstrations taking place right now, but these are cause-effect demonstrations, meaning that if it weren't for the slaughter of the Gazans, these demonstrations wouldn't be happening. These people aren't going to go into the streets and demonstrate on behalf of a two-state solution or a one-state solution or a free Palestine. They're demonstrating because the bombing's happening. So what happens when the bombs stop falling, when the genocide stops? Are these people going to continue to be out there putting the pressure on the United States? Is the United States going to continue to feel isolated, or is it going to go back to what it was, where people say, wait a minute, so they've stopped, we don't have to turn on TV and look at dead Palestinian babies anymore? Oh, thank God. So let's get back to what we were doing, which is chugging along with normal economic activity where the Palestinians are problematic. We don't want to do it. And so the danger here is that all the sacrifice that the Palestinians have made, and believe me, they are making the suffering they're doing through, and you see there's a growing recognition amongst them that they have to do this. This is their burden to pay to get statehood, that all of that will be for naught, because there will be a desire to, we don't want to embarrass Israel. We don't want to humiliate Israel. We're going to look for a compromise solution where we have a moderate Israeli government who will return to giving lip service to, reviving Oslo, but never really being serious about reviving Oslo. And gradually the Palestinians will be forgot again. I'm afraid that's the direction that we're heading. And so, it's imperative that the international community find a way to sustain this pressure, because change will happen because the United States feels the pressure. I mean, when we start turning on Israel, the pressure is working. All right. But the problem is, let's say we get Israel to change, the fighting stops in Gaza. Now the United Nations comes in with their, because the UN doesn't like the Palestinians either. I mean, nobody likes the Palestinians. They've been getting screwed by everybody forever. And so you start turning it over to these old institutions, and it's forgotten. The only one out there articulating right now for the Palestinians seriously is Iran. And here's where the hope is, because Iran has good relations with two nations who are the nemesis of the United States in the geopolitical arena, Russia and China. And Russia and China have historically kept sort of a hands-off approach to the Palestinian issue. But I think Russia and China, I think they do care about the Palestinians. There's a genuine concern. You see, Putin articulating things that no Western leader has ever articulated about what Israel is doing, criticizing Israel. And China's talking about getting engaged. And it's in China's interest to take advantage of what's going on to expand. Because what is Gaza going to need? Infrastructure development. Who's pretty good at that? China. So it's an opportunity for China. It also, if you keep pushing the necessity of a Palestinian state to resolve this Arab-Israeli conflict, you keep putting pressure on the United States too. What the United States wants to do is quickly get back to, even though Biden says that we won't be returning to October 6th, I guarantee you all the U.S. wants to do is get back to October 6th. That's all we want to do. We're not looking forward to any of this innovative political stuff in the Middle East. It scares us. Russia and China, on the other hand, are looking forward to something like that. So I'm not giving up hope for the Palestinians, but I am saying that all this stuff that we're seeing, all this pressure, these votes at the UN, that can disappear that quick. And you know it. You know it can, because we're not talking about, a deep foundation of love for the Palestinians out there in the world. We don't like seeing dead Palestinian kids. So people are rallying to the cause of Palestine. But when the kids stop dying, will that support for Palestine still be there? And that's the big question.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big question, and I share your sentiment about where the hope is, because yes, Iran is indeed a very serious actor when it comes to supporting Palestine, and I think you're exactly right. Both Russia and China, when it comes to this region, see the Palestine question as both one of course, standing for international law. That's what Russia and China like to do. They like to promote it because it's within their interests. Most stable, rational countries who are thinking about both their own development and what's good for the world in terms of their own development. It's stability. It's peace. It's not having this massive conflict, which could lead, that's genocidal in nature, that could lead to a very hot war between most countries in the region. That is an ultimate disaster for Russia and China. So, of course, this Palestine question is so important to not just stabilize, but also, Russia and China are the only countries outside of the region, for the most part, outside of some outliers that don't have the same kind of influence. But the biggest countries that do support a Palestinian state and legitimately do, not giving lip service like Blinken does when, he says we're for this two-state solution, and then, green lights the absolute eradication of it that Israel is pursuing. Both Russia and China actually do support this.
Yeah, and we are living in an age of geopolitical transformation. I mean, it sounds very academic. It sounds like geopolitics 201, your junior level course in college for that international relations degree. But it's real and it's happening, and it's in many ways it's exciting, but in many ways it's scary, because we collectively, the world, have for so long grown accustomed to American hegemony. We can talk about how we're opposed to it, And everybody's like, we're against American imperialism. We're against hegemony. We're against the rules-based international order. Of course you are, except you're not, because you are for stability. And while there is a whole bunch of instability in the world out there, there's a whole bunch of stability that's brought about by this. And people are lulled into a false sense of complacency by the perception of stability. And right now, where this transformation that's taking place from the American singularity to this global multipolarity, BRICS and all that stuff, it scares people, because it means you have to put your faith and your trust in something else. Now, if you're somebody who has been disrupted by the American singularity, yeah, you're ready to jump ship. But if you're somebody whose life has been chugging along in relative comfort, it's a scary proposition, a frightening proposition. So it's not, automatic logic where people say, well, America's failed, so we're going to jump on the Chinese and the Russian ship. Well, for many places in the world, America hasn't failed. We didn't get to be number one because we're a bunch of losers. Okay, we did some things right, and we bullied our way to the top, whatever you want to say. But America is a very powerful nation that has a lot of successes attached to it. And a lot of people around the world found those successes attractive, especially the political and economic elites who make money off the American singularity. And so this idea that we're just going to seamlessly transfer power over to the Russians and the Chinese, that ain't going to happen. This is a very scary time. And it would be scary if this transformation was taking place in a conflict-free environment. But now we start throwing in the not only the reality of war, but what's that biblical statement? Rumors of war. There will be rumors of war. There will be wars and rumors of war. So we have real war, but we have rumors of war too. Potential of conflict that is generated by the friction that comes from this transformation. It scares the crap out of me. And I think it scares the crap out of just about anybody who's out there, because, is the United States willing to go gently into that good night? Dylan from Dylan Thomas here. Or are we going to rage against the dying of the light? And my fear is that we're going to rage, and we're going to lash out, and we're going to create problems. We're going to make as much friction as possible, rather than doing the smart thing, which is to smoothly transition and take an important seat at the table of multipolarity. We're going to resist that for as long as possible. And the consequences aren't just going to be economic and political disruption, but it can be, chaos and conflict as well. So as much as it makes sense for Russia and China to step into this Palestinian, crisis and be the leaders to get us out, it's just not that easy. America's not going to give up the role that it's enjoyed for the last, 40, 50 years as the lead influencer in the Middle East region. We're not going to, hand that mantle over to Russia and China willingly. So there's a lot of disruptive capacity out there, a lot of mischief for America to cause, going forward.
Yes, indeed, and perhaps we can close the program on this. You wrote a couple of articles in the last couple of weeks. One of them is for Energy Intelligence. You wrote about, is the U.S. still an essential nation? And you also wrote for RT recently an article about the U.S. military's multi-trillion-dollar fraud. And there were a lot of interlocking, very interconnected points about everything that you just stated. And so I wanted to ask you to close here, with regard to these developments. You are also trying to build a campaign, waging peace. You're trying to develop a film. And I'll pull all of this stuff up as you're talking. Given that the United States is spending so much on its military, and all of its maneuvers and its leadership are committed to these maneuvers, point to a pretty disastrous conflict that you say with Russia, with China, and you also have this unresolved and with what's gone on with Israel's onslaught in Gaza, obviously still a very relevant point, the Middle East or West Asia. That is still very much a possibility of potential hot conflict. given all of this, I mean, one, how do you feel like your film, Waging Peace, will contribute to, helping the United States become a more rational actor on the world stage? And two, uh, uh, where do you see this going? Do you see, because on the one hand we have the United States' belligerence is so clear for all of us, but on the other hand there are some pretty stark barriers. A lot of money being spent, not a lot of wars being won, and that could very well lead to massive changes in its own right. So I'll kick it to you while I pull up your materials.
Well, I'm I'm old school American, I guess I will say, is that I have faith in the system. I know if I glance over to the comments, I'm probably going to be eviscerated for saying that. How could you have faith in the system? How can you? Um, Look, if I don't have faith in the system, if I don't believe in the potential of this country, then what the hell do I believe in? I mean, America doesn't exist. It's not, it's not a viable entity. And I'm not willing to go down that route. So I hold out hope that the American people will be able to be awakened by all that's happening around him. I wrote this article in RT, and one of the things I talk in there is about the fact that the United States has grown so accustomed to throwing money at the Department of Defense because we just assume that if we funded it, then America will be able to win every war in the world. And what the American people are finding out is that not only could we not defeat the Taliban, not only could we not defeat Al Qaeda, we can't beat Russia, China. We can't beat anybody. We can't beat Iran. We don't have the ability to do this. And yet we're spending all this money. And so I think there's a growing sense of betrayal. And the idea of, America being the essential nation, we can't be the essential nation when we don't allow our, that's going to be passed on, and BRICS is going to mature as an institution and be capable of challenging the G7, the G20, and other Western-dominated forums.
Jack, in the United States of America, has Biden started to pressure Netanyahu enough to change the course of action in Israel, or have we not reached that point yet?
I think we see Biden starting to pressure. We see talk of sanctioning the, some of the West Bank settlers, and we hear talk about, toning down some of the aid potentially, but it's very difficult given the impact of the pro-Israeli lobbies on American politics. I think the real impetus for change is going to come from within Israel. I think you're seeing a growing number of Israelis recognize that Netanyahu is the greatest threat. He's an existential threat to Israel, and that he needs to be removed regardless of what the United States thinks or says. So I think the biggest pressure is going to come from inside Israel, not from the United States.
Sebastian in New York City, where the area code is 212. Given that the U.S. and Israel have a distinct advantage in their air power, how do the various resistance factions, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, etc., defend against this air power?
Well, first of all, air power alone does not win a war. I refer back to my experience during Desert Storm and trying to, facilitate the hunting of Iraqi Scuds in Western Iraq. You know, we were able to fly A-10s and F-15Es and F-16s and everything else out there, and we never got one. They fired them while now they had some effective air defense in certain areas, but the bottom line is we had uncontested air power, and we never killed a Scud, never came close. I think one time we got close, but that was more by luck than skill. And now with the Houthi, we're bombing, and they're still launching. Hezbollah has dealt with the Israeli Air Force. Air power doesn't guarantee outcomes. You need to combine air power with effective ground power. And right now, Hezbollah, the Houthi, Hamas, they've adapted to Israel's air superiority. Hamas has gone underground in tunnels, operating from the rubble of a city destroyed by air power. Hezbollah is also underground. And the Houthi, just a big country, and they're able to shuffle things around. They've been doing it since 2014 against American airplanes flown by Saudi pilots. So I think they've countered that.
Aries, that might be pronounced, last name P, in the United States of America. Gonzalo Lira met his demise in the hands of the Ukrainian secret police. Do you stand by your previous statements that he was a turned collaborator, or will you be revising your position?
Look, Gonzalo Lira's death was a tragedy. I'm sorry he's dead. I wish he hadn't died. I wish he had received care. I wish the United States government had shown concern for Gonzalo along the lines of the concern they show for the Wall Street Journal, reporter who was arrested in Russia, ostensibly for spying. But that's not the issue. The question is what I previously said. What's the gentleman's name? I want to be
Aries, A-R-E-S. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Aries. Answer me this question, Aries. This is a simple mind problem here. You got Gonzalo Lira in Kharkov. That's Ukraine, by the way, broadcasting on the internet in a manner which violates Ukrainian law. We know that. He knew that. He said so. He said, yeah, I'm breaking all sorts of laws here. And those laws that he violated carried the death penalty. He knew that too, because he said, if I'm ever arrested and I'm gone for more than 12 hours, assume I'm dead. Well, guess what, Aries? He got arrested by the Ukrainian Secret Service. Should have died, right? I mean, he was after violating the laws. Should have died, right? No, 5 days later, he's released. He called it my missing week. He sort of smirked about it. He's under house arrest. He has an ankle bracelet on him, and they give him his computers back. To do what, Aries? To continue doing the exact thing he was doing when he was arrested, violating Ukrainian law. Come on, man. Turn on your brain for a second. Do you think he did that with the permission of the Ukrainian government? Or was he so bold and brave that even under house arrest, using computers given to him by the Ukrainian government, he was trying to exercise free speech? And he wasn't doing it covertly. He had a whole new roundtable format where he's bringing people in and all this kind of stuff. Dude, I've been around the block. I know counterintelligence. I know how these operations work. There is no other way to describe this other than that he was a controlled SBU asset. He was arrested, charged with crimes that bring the death penalty. He was released and allowed to do the exact same thing while under house arrest. Okay, if you can't square that curve, don't talk to me.
All right. Yeah, I don't really understand the flack you get about this. First of all, I think you're right. And even if you're not, you're just giving your opinion about what happened. It's not as if you said anything that's disrespectful towards him, I don't think.
Well, I mean, some people say, oh, well, you say he's a controlled asset. You tell me. I mean, all the people go, bullshit, Scott, fuck off, Bronson. What do you know, Bronson? What are your credentials? Are you a counterintelligence agent? Have you ever done this for a fucking living? I have, asshole. Okay. I know a controlled asset when I see a controlled asset. And Gonzalo Lira was a controlled asset. And all you assholes out there who fell in love with Dr. Red Pill and whatever he had to say, up to the first arrest. Greenhorn, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with that. But once he was arrested and then released under house arrest to do the exact same thing, there ain't no other explanation, pal. None. Zero. Zip. So shut the fuck up. I'm tired of this conversation. I really am. You guys fell in love with Gonzalo Lira. That's your own little fantasy world. Leave me the fuck out of it.
All right. So in other words, you will be revising your position on Gonzalo Lira.
Yeah, I'll deliver it in Morse code.
All right. Guy from Tel Aviv, Israel. What's your current understanding of the potential war between Israel and Lebanon and its potential outcomes? Living here, it's pretty frightening thinking what the Lebanese arsenal can do to where I live. Netanyahu is a psychopath and going to get us killed.
Yeah, I mean, look, my understanding of the potential war between Israel and Lebanon, let's put it this way. Israel's fought 2 stand-up fights with Hezbollah, and they lost them both. Hezbollah kicked the living shit out of Israel in southern Lebanon, evicting them from every place but the Sheba farms. I think that was in 2000. In 2006, Israel and Hezbollah had another go around, 33 days in in the summer, and Hezbollah beat Israel then too. And now, what Israel's saying is, we're going to take the fight to Hezbollah. We're going to push Hezbollah back to the Litani River, and the Hezbollah. You think they sat there and went, "Yeah, let's get ready to let the Israelis do what they want to do. Let's prepare defenses all the way up to the Litani River in depth, because we know the Israelis have been preparing to do this." The Hezbollah said this: if there's another war, it ain't going to be fought defending the Litani. We're going to make you defend northern Israel. We're going to seize Galilee. And that's the reality. When this war starts, Israel's going to punch about 30,000 troops up into southern Lebanon towards the Litani, and then about 15 to 20,000 Hezbollah fighters are going to appear in their rear in, Kiryat Shimona and other places, and they're going to seize northern Israel. They're going to take it up to the Galilee, and there's not a damn thing Israel can do it down. Meanwhile, Israel, what about the Israeli Air Force? They have to take off and land somewhere, right? Are we agree with that? It's not magic. It's not a computer game where they can just magically, click, 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 click. The Israeli Air Force is here. They got to be on a base. That base is on land. That land is within a range of Hezbollah's precision-guided munitions. And they will eliminate these bases and the airplanes that operate on these bases. So Israel won't have an air force. Not only that, but every strategic target in Israel will be saturated with long-range precision strike missiles coming out of Hezbollah that aren't the unguided rockets being fired by Hamas from Gaza. It's going to be the real deal. It's game, set, match. Israel can't win. And so, fortunately, the Israeli army knows this. They're aware of this, and they're not going to commit suicide. I think Netanyahu has got to go, and I think that's the reason why a lot of people are pushing for him to go, because his only ability to stay in power is to be relevant as a wartime leader. He just lost in Hamas, against Hamas and Gaza. I hope all the Israelis understand. You guys lost. Take the L, man. And now the only way he can stay relevant is to have a new war. And he's talking about it with Hezbollah, but he'll take Israel down with it. And I'm starting to believe that the Israelis recognize this, and there's a big movement now within Israel for him to take a hike.
All right, let's do one more question and then do the coin giveaway. Even though he typed in all caps, we'll make an exception and take this question anyway. You know how that drives me crazy. Kareem Abulafa in the United Kingdom. Last year, some commentators were talking about a civil war in Israel due to the judicial reforms Netanyahu was trying to force through. It exposed major fissures in Israeli society. Once the Gaza assault and other local conflicts come to end, will these fissures within Israeli society be intensified? Will there be a civil war?
Well, I mean, you're right. The judicial reforms, the rewriting of Israeli basic law, did create serious fissures. The Israeli Supreme Court has ruled against Netanyahu's efforts to subordinate the Israeli judiciary to a politicized Knesset, and so that's done away with. This is why Netanyahu's so desperate right now, because he knows that he's going to be arrested and charged and all that. So I think what's happening is he's trying to work out a mechanism where he is granted some sort of amnesty, so that if he relinquishes power, that he won't be arrested, that he will be allowed to either go into exile or internally or externally. I don't think he's going to hang around Israel much longer, because there will be a commission about October 7th and what happened and the crimes committed, and he and his government won't fare well. That commission could get very ugly, but I don't think you're going to see a civil war come from it. But I will say this: back in 1998, when I was working with Israeli intelligence, a colonel whose job it was to put together the assessment, the ranking of threats to Israel, said that the number one threat to Israel was from far right-wing Israeli Jewish Orthodox extremists. He recognized that in 1998, and that's the reality today. So there's a big problem. You have a lot of people with weapons. How Israel is going to deal with the West Bank settlers is still an unanswered question. But I don't think they're going to go to civil war. I think that the revision of basic law could have taken them down that direction. The Israeli president warned about that, but that problem's been resolved. Let me. I have been told that there's a new kill list out, different than the Mirotvorets kill list, and that I feature prominently in that. So, and that this one is actually coordinated with Western intelligence. There's a known linkage with British intelligence, for example, and they are encouraging. They're through the website. They've placed a $10,000. God, if you're going to kill me, come on, man, earn more than 10,000. That's sort of cheap, really. Make it 50, make it 100, but 10, that's insulting. But so it's there. And while I was traveling, there were concerns that that the Ukrainians were, or could be, or would be, or are, who knows, actively targeting. So it's not fantasy; it's real. I was also briefed by people who are knowledgeable of these things that I should be really concerned here in the United States, not just over in Russia, that there are elements of the American-Ukrainian society that are unstable. And the closer Ukrainian defeat comes to being actualized, the more desperate they might become. So it's a threat. Israel, look, the Israelis have, they're insane right now. They are literally governed by insane people. Who knows? It is what it is. There's not much you can do about it. I can say that I don't really give a shit. If you're going to kill me. Don't. I prefer you don't.
They'll have to get past Maverick first.
But Maverick will kick your ass, and then Machismo, my secret asset, the Chihuahua from hell, will rip your throat out. And Tegan, the big older shepherd dog, will just watch it all and advise. But the point is, you can't live your life in fear. If you're going to try and do the right thing and you have plenty of enemies trying to stop you, the quickest way to stop you is through intimidation. And they've been trying to intimidate me my entire life. It isn't going to work. I'm not saying this from bravado, because I don't want to die. I don't want to get shot. I don't want my family put at risk. I'd prefer to have a nice, happy life. I ain't getting any younger. So it's not like I'm sitting there saying, bring it on. No, don't bring it on. Leave me the fuck alone. But I'm not going to stop doing what I do, because people out there are trying to intimidate me and others into silence. And I would hope that others on the list, and I know some, Diane Sayre's on the list, others are on the list, Ray McGovern, we have so many friends on that list. None of them are shutting up, and nor should they. So to all the people that think they can silence me, pound sand. It ain't going to work.
All right. Everybody who's anybody is on that list.
You'll be on it too, Jeff. We'll get you on that list.
Yeah, by hanging out with you. That's how they're taking Trump. How they're taking Trump down. All the people around him are getting hassled in one way or another. Old Blind Jim, how would you feel about lowering your computer?
I just did, sir. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, sir. What would you like to say to Scott?
Okay. I do empathize with Scott on his feelings, and I empathize with you on your outlook about Tucker Carlson. He does need to revamp the way he goes about things. Now, I was thinking that possibly after this interview with Putin, maybe Scott could possibly reach out to the people he knows in Chechnya and wherever else he's been to see if he could possibly make a connection with Vladimir Putin. And possibly he could also get in touch with Tucker Carlson to see if Tucker would interview him and people like Diane Sayre and, the rest of the people on the list. That way, I think it would be more of an avalanche of the people of this country getting more knowledge in a faster way. So that's my question to Scott. And
all right. Again, Jeff. Thanks for calling. You can listen to Scott's answer on your computer. All the best, Old Blind Jim. Thank you very much.
Let me put it this way. Jeff, you can back me up on this. I'm not a journalist. I mean, I play one on TV. I function as a journalist. I write articles. I go and do research. I travel and I comment on that. So I engage in journalism, but I'm not the guy to interview Vladimir Putin. It's not my place to do that. I mean, I would love to have a conversation with Vladimir Putin. And if we recorded that conversation could be played. That would be wonderful. But I'm not a journalist. First of all, a journalist A journalist is not an expert. A journalist is a person who writes questions and asks questions. I'm a freaking expert. Okay. I'm not a journalist that sits there and has somebody else do the research for me and ask questions. No, I engage on that which I'm an expert in, and I'm very comfortable doing that. And I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with anybody in Russia, especially the Russian president, about the status of U.S.-Russian relations, about arms control, about Russia itself. I'd love to get more insight from Vladimir Putin about the decade of the 90s and the problems he faced in those formative years of his presidency, the first term, as he dragged Russia out of that. I'd like to have more insight into that. I'd love to have a conversation with him about that. But I'm not going to compete with Tucker Carlson on an interview. Tucker Carlson's got this unique opportunity, and hopefully he knocks it out of the ballpark. And it's there. And the last thing I would want to do is go in and have this is Oscar award level interview. What, I'm supposed to come in with a B level movie and compete with that? No, that ain't going to be what I do. What I would like to do is talk to Tucker Carlson when he gets back about his experience in Russia and to compare notes about Russia and to talk about Russophobia, because now Tucker's starting to experience firsthand something I've been experiencing for a long time, the attacks. And I'd love to have a conversation with Tucker Carlson about what it means to be an American, how the true definition of patriotism isn't to sit back and nod your head dumbly at what the U.S. government tells you to nod your head at, but rather to go out and challenge the U.S. government to gather knowledge and information. What is the motto of the show? Knowledge is power. We sell a t-shirt that says that. Well, Tucker Carlson's in the business of gathering knowledge, and it will empower you. I'd love to have that conversation with Tucker. So, Tucker, if you're listening, if you're watching, or if any of your people are watching, when you get back, call me. And I'd be more than happy to have that conversation with you.
All right. Well, whether you call it an interview or a conversation, every Wednesday, Scott hosts the Scott Ritter Show, in which the guest is a military expert, usually from Russia. And they have what I would call an interview, but you can call it a conversation if you want. In any case, it streams every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. on Rumble and Locals. And you can get links to those channels directly if you go to scottritter.us. The URL is right at the bottom there. And let us move on to the next question.
Well, this
from
week, just so
Charmaine.
everybody knows, this week the interview is with the former Prime Minister of Ukraine, Nikolai, and
You weren't ready for this.
Oh God, I wasn't ready for you to bring that up. But Nikolai Azarov. And so we had a very nice conversation about the current state of civil military affairs or relations in Ukraine, the Zelensky-Zaluzhny controversy, and what the path to peace could look like.
All right. And if you're not already familiar with how to find us on Rumble or Locals, quickest, easiest way to get there is scottritter.us, and you will see the links there. The next question is from Charmaine in Oregon. I just watched HBO's 5-part series on Chernobyl. Have you seen it? Thoughts on the series? It certainly captured the bravery of Russians.
Well, the first thing you have to understand about the series is that while I think it did a fantastic job of covering the real situation, beware, because there are some characters there who are an amalgam of characters. They've taken like 5 people and made them into one. You have to do that for shows of this nature, because to tell the truth using all the personalities, it would just get too confusing for TV. So they did simplify. But I went in and I dug deep into into each of the characters and the storyline, and they nailed it. I mean, there's even the people who lived through it are like, yeah, no, that's what it was. And I would recommend that show to anybody. I think it was fantastic. I've watched it several times. It's just it's an engrossing show. It's a terrifying show. But I think the person nailed it right. The heroism of the Russians, of the Soviets, because it was indeed during Soviet times, the heroism displayed by people, especially those knowing they were going to die. I mean, the people did things with absolute knowledge that they were going to lose their lives because of this. And many of them did die of cancer, excruciatingly. It's just, I think you know, I would just recommend it to anybody. It was a very informative show, but I mean, if you're not near tears by the end of the show, then you're not a human being.
All right. In the interest of full disclosure, we should tell folks that I am, in fact, an AI-generated composite myself, sort of a combination between Fabio and Larry David, in case it wasn't obvious. It's about time we came clean on that. Hey, Scott, how about a voicemail message from a woman named Rowan who wants to know about Russian hospitals?
Hi, Scott and Jeff. I had a question for Scott. I wondered, as a healthcare worker, if while you were in Russia, you had a chance to visit any hospitals or casualty units and how those might differ from those in the US. Thank you.
Well, I need Jeff to take me off the 3-minute timer for this one because it's
Really?
a
You want me
story.
to not do it for this?
If I'm going to answer this one seriously, then I have to tell a little bit of a story.
All right. We won't put you on the 3-minute clock.
With
Go
your
ahead.
permission. Look, when I was in Russia in May, Alexander Ziryanov, who the people in the show should be familiar with, he was interviewed by us while I was in Russia this last time. He was outstanding host, and but people may not know it, but I suffer from pretty bad peripheral neuropathy. My legs don't work, and I sort of have to retrain myself to walk every morning because I have no feeling in my legs, so I have to get up in position and I do my best. I get on with it, but he noticed me getting out of the vehicle that he's sitting there going, "Hey, there's something wrong with this dude." And so he said, "You all right?" And I said, "Well, not really, but I'll get on." But he was concerned, and so he, I told you he has the magic phone, and so he picked up the phone and he called a doctor, and next thing you know, I have a